So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. Today we have Jussara Korngold, our dear friend, the General Secretary of the International Spiritist Council. She was the former president and now she's the Vice President of the United States Spiritist Federation. She's also the founder and president of the Spiritist Group of New York and Spiritist Alliance for books. She's an international speaker that many of you have met, a published author, and a translator. But besides that, she is passionate about our doctrine, and she has taken her stand to really grow Spiritism in the US and in the world. So we are very happy to have you here, Jussara. Thank you so much for being with us. Today, Jussara will be talking about faith to the end. And this is such an important topic for all of us as we all go through our highs and lows in life. And we look forward to learning from you. Thank you, Jussara, for being with us.
Thank you, Anna. I'm very happy to be talking to you guys for Chico Xavier Learning Center, all of you that are here. And I would like to greet all of those that are in person, spirits, and of course, virtually following us. And I feel very grateful for the opportunity, as you said, Anna, to be able to share this passion that represents the spiritism in my life and all the spiritual values that we have and have been trying to apply in our day-to-day lives from so long, and it's going to be more incarnations. And this is the reason why I chose this topic that talks about faithfulness. Faithfulness in our day-to-day lives, in our abilities, and faith in ourselves and what we are capable of doing, of achieving, what we represent when we are talking about our presence in the world, in our community, in our families, in our place of work, and with us when we are talking about emotional and spiritual achievements. And for this, we are going to use as base a book that was recently released by the spirit Joana de Angelis through the medium Divaldo Pereira Franco, and we can order this book through Leal Publisher. It's a book that is called A Full Life, and Joana de Angelis presents a message, be faithful to the end, where she leads us to start thinking about all our position and all our certainty in the things that we are going to be doing and applying. Of course, when we're talking about faithfulness and trying to understand exactly what that means and looking for support in terms of understanding the terminology, it's normally related to zeal, respect, loyalty, commitment, which is really a word that we have to be thinking about and internalize this word in everything that we do. Normally, when we talked before about faithfulness, it was always related somehow to religion, to followers of a particular religion, but it's always connected as well to loyalty, to honesty, and commitment. So loyalty, commitment is always words that we can relate when we are talking about faith, because faith is so much more than just thinking about any kind of a religious position in the world, whether you have or not a particular religion or any kind of uh, um, personal preference, but the spirituality, religiosity, most of the times is present in many of us. And a spiritual Emmanuel in a book that is called Peace and Renewal, he talks about courage and faith. So, because many times when we are facing certain situations, we are required to use or to have this kind of courage as well. So, he says the following: so, for us to continue in the service of good, when everything else, everything around us seems to be a path of evil, of, bad things happening to us, adversities. So this is the real meaning of loyalty to God. So, and it's very important for us to think about it now, because as we all know, the past few years have not been easy for any of us. We were faced with so many challenges, rethinking our lifestyle, rethinking our values, and now we are trying to get back to what it was before, not necessarily adapting to that kind of lifestyle any longer, but not knowing exactly where to position ourselves. And we feel kind of lost, and as if we were walking on moving sands, because we don't know what is going to happen next. So this impact us so much in our position in relation to everything. Of course, our goal here, this is where I'm going to be addressing or directing my words more, is in terms of our spirituality, is in terms of what we have achieved already and how we intend to continue in this path and continue with this work that we may call it, or we may say that is a work of inner transformation. When we awakened, or when we received this call, let's say it like this, the call that can come even from our own conscious, we saw that we were misplaced, or that we were misplacing our values, our inner values, and the way we position ourselves in relation to life. And this is where we started taking this path, trying to implement these changes. But then, like we were saying, with everything that is happening around us, with us, it sometimes makes it very hard for us to stay faithful to what now seems to be and should be our main objective, which is to really work on our inner improvement. So this statement by Emmanuel is very powerful, because this is most of the times what happens. If everything is good, if everything is working okay, and we say that we have this faith, it is because we are trying to be good, it's because we have the protection of the good spirits, the benefactors. And as soon as something goes wrong, or even a little wrong, we start doubting ourselves, doubting our values, doubting the achievements we have, and doubting the presence and assistance of the benefactors. So this is when Emmanuel says it is when everything is in kind of in disarray, that we will get to know the real ones, the ones that really have faith. It is the example that we have during the time of Jesus, during the time of the implementation of Christianity, or Christ's values with the martyrs. For instance, they did not go back in their beliefs to the point of being led to their death, but is still being faithful in this position. Of course, unfortunately, in a way, we are not called to do the same today. We are not required to go to the arenas, but we still know how much challenges we are going to find, even to try to tame the inner beasts that we have inside of us. And this is so hard. It is so difficult that even for those who had a close contact with a being of such purity that we call Jesus, a pure spirit, someone that had this close contact with him, to the point of not positioning himself in a way that he would demonstrate this kind of faith. We are talking about Peter. Peter, we can say that for sure that Peter was one of the closest disciples of Jesus. He every time we hear one of the passages, or if we are studying one of the passages from the life of Jesus, we will see that Peter was together. There was always at least three disciples, and Peter's was always the one, and Jesus would always be with Peter in his home when he was in Capernaum. So when Jesus told him that before there was the singing of the crow, he would three times be denying Jesus. And what was the first reaction of Peter? A reaction that we are very familiar with: arrogance. To say, no, you are absolutely wrong. This is not going to happen to me. I'm never going to deny you. I'm faithful. I follow you. I understand you. I'm always with you. So this is our reaction as well. When we are called, someone may call our attention to, pay attention. Maybe you are kind of going astray, or I feel a certain fragility here. We will say, no, I'm strong, I can deal with that, and all of a sudden we will see that this is not true. And we have our weaknesses, and it's hard. This is what happened. But since we are talking about Peter, for Peter, that was a transformative experience. That was the road to Damascus for Peter, because after that, and the third time that he denied having known Jesus, he caught the eyes of Jesus, and he felt so ashamed. He realized how weak he was. But from that point on, if we're going to analyze the lives of Peter, he was always completely dedicated to the cause, to the point of being led to become a martyr himself, but always working in this sense. So sometimes we need this kind of occurrences to really become aware of our possibilities, but at the same time become aware not only of the fragilities that we have, the weaknesses that we still have, but also the potential we have to endure. Because that was what Peter did. He endured. He continued. He said, I learned my lesson. I know my limitations, but I will not fail this time. And this is what happened in this sense when he continues in this path. So Emmanuel, in this lesson, he says that one of the things that we have to be doing, things that we can do, is always to try to maintain a tranquil heart, being very vigilant in terms of our spirit, in terms of our actions, always resorting to prayer, and advancing all the time, advancing, even if we fail, even if we feel that we are not moving up as we would like to. Any progress is progress. Sometimes I like to use numbers sometimes, and I say, sometimes people will not make a big deal of 0.1, okay? But it's a 0.1 already. It's not zero. Anything that is not zero is good. And keep our our goal, our optimistic way of continuing of believing, okay, now I'm point one, soon I will be point two, soon I will be one, and then we move up. And in this case, what happens in this process is when we are, we start reflecting about our our position, our goals, because of being really tired of everything that we have been through and other existence and in this one as well, and we try to reposition ourselves in a path of spirituality. um Joana de Angelis advises us to continue in this journey, to persevere in our higher ideals, our existential goals, regardless of how hard it can be. And even trying to make a point in terms of our relationships, our position in the world in relation to others. How many of us here, sometimes even in our own home, we don't have, our family members or our closest friends, understanding what we are doing. So she tells us to not expect the understand of others. This is a journey that it's an individual journey. And we know for sure that everyone will have to go through that. So what is the point of just because people that are closer to us not following in the same speed or not even being interested in starting this kind of journey, for us to give up as well, if sooner or later they will have to take the same journey we are taking now. So this work that she says is a work of freeing us from ignorance, from cruelty. So things that are very important for us in this whole process. It's interesting because there is one message in the book, Posthumous Work, that is in relation to Kardec's mission. So there was a point in Kardec's life that he was very troubled by how people were referring to him, were trying to position him in relation to all that was happening in terms of, the communications and his achievements in terms of, already start gathering and analyzing all the notebooks he had received and all the information he was gathering. And so even before he published the Spirits book, a bit less than a year before that, with everyone putting all the responsibility and trying to placing him in a position of a missionary, etc. He was very troubled, and he went to one of those seances with the mediums that where he trusted completely, and he had a conversation with the spirit that is known as the Spirit of Truth, which us in Spiritism believe that the Spirit of Truth is Jesus himself. What is amazing is that when the Spirit of Truth started talking to Kardec, he said that he would be available to Kardec 15 minutes a month. And I think this is so extraordinary because sometimes we all the time are talking about, oh, is spirit so and so, the highly evolved benefactors are going to come and talk to me and do things through me or help me. And here we have, Kardec with all this significant work that he had to be doing in relation to humanity, having Jesus saying to him, 15 minutes a month is enough. And I keep on thinking that, 15 minutes of Jesus reflections is actually worth of a lifetime, for us to fully comprehend the words and etc. But then Kardec starts talking to Jesus or to the Spirit of Truth. That communication was in 1956, June or July, if I'm not mistaken. And the Spirit of Truth confirms to Kardec that, in fact, he had a work to do. He had a mission to accomplish. And but that he had not done anything at that point. And so it could change anytime, of course. We cannot say you are a missionary until you fulfill your mission. So in this kind of conversation, Kardec asked the Spirit of Truth, what causes could determine my failure? Could it be the insufficiency of my abilities? I really think this is so important, because sometimes we place too much value in our intellectual achievements, which we know it's very important. This is, we are here and we have the two wings of involvement, the love and intellect, and they have to go hand in hand. But sometimes we forget about the main issue. And of course, when replying to Kardec in terms of insufficiency of abilities, let us remember that at this point, Kardec was, a scholar, a pedagogue, a translator. He spoke 3, 4, 5 languages. He was a member of the Academy of Science. He would be involved in so many of the intellectual achievements of his time. Books that he wrote for the education is still in place, in use in France to this time. So it would not be about intellectual abilities. And it's interesting, if you go and read this message later, how the Spirit of Truth actually lists to him what he really needs to achieve the mission in terms of personal value. But at this point, the Spirit of Truth says that it would not be his insufficiency of, the insufficiency of this kind of abilities, but pointing out that the work of, or the mission of, reformers is always very susceptible of finding difficulties and dangers. And he warned him that his was a very tough one, because it was about shaking and transforming the whole world. So, okay, why am I bringing this here, right? We are not Kardec. We are not fulfilling a mission of, shaking and transforming the whole world. But we are doing something. Sometimes this lack of faith that we are talking about, sometimes is a lack of faith on our own selves, on our own possibilities, and how we can impact the world. Right? That's why Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, because if we do our changes, if we do the things that we have to do, we will be seeing that happening as well. So we have something, we have a commitment to fulfill here, even if this commitment is only to take care of ourselves, not to be a troublesome anymore in terms of the spiritual evolvement of our planet and being able to continue here. So Joanna de Angelis then says that in relation to this work that we are doing for the community, this work of goodness, we should never allow, this kind of interference in terms of not being understood or not being accepted, to go in the way of what we have set ourselves to do. So this was the case with Kardec. That's what the Spirit of Truth told him. You'll find all the difficulties. You'll find everything in your journey, in your path. to the point of that Kardec, after this message, he wrote another one 10 years later saying everything that, the Spirit of Truth told me actually happened in terms of all these difficulties, the challenges he was going to find. So we have to understand that in the same way that maybe earlier in this incarnation and for sure in previous incarnations, we were not interested in pursuing this path. There were people that also, now have a different destiny, that they are not interested in doing or in following the same journey that we are doing, what we are following now. But like you said, we said before, it's just a matter of time. They don't have an obligation to love and to like everything that we do. Theirs is a different moment in the world. And it is when she starts talking to us about this process. What was this process that led us to to where we are today, to have a vision of what we want to be in the future. And she said that everything is started about when we began to ponder about Jesus' teachings. So each time more, we want understanding that Jesus is considered to be the governor of our planet, in direct relation to the creation of our planet, to our positioning here, to our involvement here. So it is inevitable for all human, or for all this of spirits or human souls, to not come to a point where we are going to bring his teachings to us. Not necessarily, because here we are not here to worship the man, but to worship the values of that Jesus brought to us. So when we, she said that when we start, pondering about this word, the words, and we have to understand that this has been, we have been familiar with the words of Jesus for quite some time. For sure, in our previous incarnations, we heard them so many times. Maybe even some of us here were there and heard from himself. But it, of course, if we are as we are today, we didn't internalize that well, right? So upon going through this process of understanding, the meaning, the private of any kind of any kind of dogma and misinterpretations and things that were included that not necessarily were part of his teachings, we began to reflect about our own position in terms of, not being in peace, not feeling happiness, reflecting about our behaviors and how our behaviors were impacting the world and even ourselves when we were more committed to wrongdoings. So it came, we came to a point that in this journey, that we came to a realization that we had to go in through a process of inner change and acquiring the knowledge, understanding why, but going through this process. The thing is, and this is one thing that Joanna De Angelis states a lot, this is an individual pursuit. Of course, we are going to be helping others. We are talking here to a Spiritist Center, committed to do that, right? To spread the word, not necessarily just through words, but it's mostly through examples, etc. So we are not saying that we are not going to be doing that, but we will be positioning ourselves in not expecting others to have to be in the same journey as we are. And some will be even more advanced than we are. So she says, focus on the work you have to do for yourself. And in this sense, she said that this whole process is started in us when we were feeling this giddiness, this discomfort, the pointlessness of, certain pleasures that we came to realize were doing more bad, more harm than good to us. And the wrongful acts that we were committing. But this process happened many times, many times to us in previous lives. So why haven't we begun this work before? Because the work is hard. This work of transformation is hard. This work of, being faithful to this goal, to this commitment is very hard. So many times we resorted when things were not going our way, we resorted to, as she says, to go in search of intoxicating pleasures of the senses that would make us lose even our ability to discern. So as a result of not necessarily being familiar with the message of Jesus. We knew about it, but we were not familiar really with the marvelous content that it happened. So we heard people talking about it. Like we said, we even maybe were part of a religious affiliations, even occupying certain positions in religious organizations, but we didn't understand, and we were not committed, loyal, faithful to follow this path. So it was when we finally started removing the veil, starting analyzing that, and of course with the knowledge that we now have of the mortal spirits that came from the afterlife. And I mean, they came all the time, but we were not paying attention to that. We were not, it was not in our the things that we would place our interest in. So now we, lifting this veil, we go into a different phase. And why the faithfulness? Why is it so important for us to be talking about it? Like we said, in view of everything that we are exposed, even, the consequences of our own wrongdoings from the past, the things that still need to go through adjustments, right, in our personal way of, conducting our lives. It is natural that people will look at us and with a certain discrimination or even suspicion. We see that even in mediumship meetings when sometimes a needy spirit or a spirit that is still very much attached to negative experiences they had in previous lives. They look at us and say, well, I know you from the past, and you are not like the way you are trying to be now. So people become very suspicious, or and we can see that let's say someone is trying to stop drinking or stop smoking, and they come and tell a person, and the person will say, oh, you already tried that so many times, you're not going to succeed. You see, so there is this this kind of reaction that we will find And we have to understand that this is what we find. I find it very interesting when sometimes I say I never try, and this is not me, and should not be any spiritist to go and try to brainwash anyone in terms of spirit, in terms of spiritism, none of that. But I always position myself as being a spiritual person, a spiritist. And sometimes I think that my words fall into, deaf ears. And as soon as I may have a behavior that is not that much in accordance to my goals of being a better person, the first thing I will hear from those people is, oh, but aren't you a spiritist? You shouldn't be behaving this way, right? So this is how it is so hard for us to keep on going, but at the same time, see, they are observing us. They are looking at our behaviors. So Joanna de Angelis says that this process is a very painful process. We have this saying in English, no pain, no gain. And this is exactly what Joanna de Angelis is saying, that all missionaries of good love and knowledge had to build their ideas among tears, exile, torments, and other things, because it is a journey. It is a point of transformation. But at the same time that she tries to open our eyes, not to react as Peter, thinking, becoming too full of ourselves, saying, no, nothing can really impact my faith or my ideals. For us to ponder well and to try to establish, and to become firm on our grounds, to not really allow ourselves to have an experience like Peter had. I remember I had the blessing of knowing Spiritism since I was very young, and I was one of this, odd, weird child that was always very spiritual, etc. And I think I was around 17 and already so much committed. And at this time, she looked like an older woman. She would be her 35 years old, not before, not even 40. But she came to me and she said, I'll wait till life beats you up, and then you will see if you are going to remain spiritual and faithful. I remember that it was so harsh, so difficult to hear. And so far I have been proving her wrong, and I continue with the commitment of not proving her right. But sometimes this is how people will see, because they are not capable of doing that themselves. And there is also this phrase that says misery loves company. So when everyone is not trying to excel or excelling you in some things, it's normal. But when people start advancing and you're not, you feel misplaced. That's why it is so hard. And so this is why she's calling our attention to that, because in other words, she's saying life's going to happen, difficulties are going to happen. It even happened to, to a missionary like Kardec, and to Jesus. He wind up in the cross, right? And all the disciples went to go through that. But the focus is not life on earth. The focus is how we are bringing this life eternal to our spirit and enveloped ourselves even more in this kind of enlightenment that represents knowledge and uplift emotions. So the word from her is not feeling discouraged, not fearing when we suffer aggressions. We have to keep focus on our ability to continue in this journey, to become examples of faith and promoting the truth. And for that, she gives an example that when we are planting a garden, the initial work is always challenging. All the preparation that we have to do, finding the right soil, taking care of the soil, planting the seeds, birds that can come for the seeds, and all of those things that are very hard for us to accomplish seeing a garden on an orchard. But only time and perseverance are going to be responsible for the plants and trees to succeed. So this is the same thing. We are now, allowing the seeds of goodness to grow within us. Before the soil of our spirit, we're not ready. But it doesn't mean that we will see accomplished overnight what we want to accomplish. Sometimes, I look and I say, well, I see myself like, going through a tunnel. Okay, the back of the tunnel was very dark, and the front of the tunnel, I see this light that dazzles me, and this I have the absolute certainty that I wanted to go there, to go into that direction, but I'm not there yet, and there is no way I'm going to reach there, unless I go through, I take the journey. So it takes time, it takes perseverance. Sometimes we fall along the way. It seems that we even that had a few steps backwards, but not necessarily. And if we commit, if we trust in our efforts and the divine providence, because at the end of the day, we as children of God, we are fulfilling this destiny that we have of reaching this state of perfection. So she mentions some examples that we do not need to go into details. And I love that she mentioned examples of, since we are in America, about two Americans, Abraham Lincoln, for instance, how hard it was for him, all this work, and he wind up, being murdered. Martin Luther King, the same thing, because he had a dream, and working for this kind of journey, wind up being murdered as well. And Nelson Mandela, she talks about Nelson Mandela, about you being imprisoned uh, because he wanted to free his people for almost 3 decades. And even Louis Pasteur, because people thought he was crazy, that he was talking about this, airborne microorganism that at the time was impossible to know and to understanding. And if you see about the lives of the disciples and all the others that came, and like we said, I'm focusing more on the spiritual or spirituality side of this conversation about faith, but it applies to everything that we are doing. So the word from Joanna de Angelis is do your part. There were no apostle of good that have not gone through this challenging path. So we are not going to be an exception. Her words. And she also says that probably we will not see the results of our work in this lifetime. We will not see, triumph in this lifetime, appreciation, recognition for, the journey we are trying to take, like it happened in the past. We see so many in the past that they didn't have the recognition of the times. And now, let's think about Francis of Assisi, for instance. Um, he was not that much considered during his time for a very small group. And now, how much we talk about him and his important part of all this journey to spirituality. So her advice, keep on going. And even when receiving the ill darts the darts of ill will and ingratitude, we should return them with a smile, because nothing defeats love which is the most active living force in the universe. So this is how we, I like very much the way Joana de Angelis talks to us, because she is showing us that she's no longer addressing children. Like, remember that from the letter of Paul, when I was a child, I dressed like a child, I ate like a child, I behaved like a child, but then I was no longer a child. So this way that Joana de Angel is talking to us, very open. And I love that this book, Full Life, comes right after the other book that she wrote, Empty Lives. So she goes in a process. Okay, let's analyze now your empty lives. What is being, you're interested at the time, and how you were losing yourself. And now what is a full life? And it's when she says, we are going to be talking as an adults, like when we think about it, the adult life is no longer like when we were in the kindergarten and playing and having play dates. We have responsibilities, but we have the good times. We have um, the reward of all our achievements and everything that we can do being a grown up. So now, growing up in a spiritual terms, this is how she comes to us, to be very realistic about our positioning. So the reason why we are here is to improve ourselves. This is not selfishness. This is not just thinking about ourselves. I remember that book. It's not yet translated into English. It's called Voltaire in Portuguese. So I returned something like this. It would be about the spirit that signs that it's Jacob, brother Jacob, where he was a very active member of the Spiritist community at his time. He worked a lot for the Spiritist community, and he was a great orator, all of those things. And when he returned and he wrote, went back to the spirit life, and he wrote, dictated this book through the medium, Chico Xavier, he positions himself as not having taking personal advantage from all the knowledge that he had. So in a way, he said, I did a lot for others, which was good. And he was not complaining, of course, about that, but I was not paying that much attention to us. And this is what we have to do, not just have recipes of how to improve other lives or what people should be doing with their lives. We have really to make this inner journey. This is the invitation from Joana de Angelis. We're going to find discrimination. We're going to find people that will be even cruel in their um, opinions about ourselves, but we have to continue knowing that this is the ideal that we have to go through. So this is what she's saying as, don't worry, you're going to succeed. That it will be a hard time, but you're going to be successful. Remain faithful. And the way she finishes the message is very beautiful, because that is always the way that she presents the topic. She goes into developing it, showing the real challenges. And she always finishes, from many of the messages and books that I read from her, pointing to a solution, or showing the support that we have. And here is when she says about our guardian angels, the support that we have that looks after us and after the humanity's destiny. And they are always watchful and active around us. She says they are invisible, but not ineffectual. They comfort us during these hard times, encourage us to go on, and give us strength so that we can continue to be faithful to the end. So for us, in all this journey, we understand that we are very young in this path. And that's why sometimes we will feel that we cannot or we may not succeed. But this is not the point here. The point is looking at ourselves today, become proud of what we have already achieved. If we look at ourselves 5 years ago, maybe we will not like this picture, right? It may not seem much, but this seed that we are that have been planted as this seed of self-illumination, self-enlightenment, it is growing and is going to show each time more results. So let's continue in this journey of endurance that it's going to be a part of our lives, but continuing serving, continuing with our commitment to look after ourselves and help in this journey of improvement of humanities in earth as well. So whatever we can give, whatever we can provide, and most of all, our examples of saying, I have trust. I know my the reason why I'm here. I know what I have to accomplish, and I know how much, the little things that I can do with my own life, they can also impact the lives of others and can help in this process of improvement. So we are going to stop here and stay open for the comments you may have.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. There are so many things that I want to mention about this conversation. First of all, the journey, as you said, thinking that our reaction on, when we are going through trouble, how we react through the difficulties. That's not about the end, but it's about the journey. And the Gospel according to Spiritism, there is that passage about the narrow door. And when I think about the narrow door, and I heard that from, a friend of mine about 30 years ago, there's no way that I'm going to go through a narrow door without kind of scratching myself, or having to squeeze. So it's not going to be comfortable. And maybe I will have some bruises to be able to go through that narrow door. And as you said, Jesus never said that was going to be easy, right? And it wasn't even easy for him, even though he didn't deserve to go through what he went through. But I think that was also an example for all of us that if he could do it, we can do it too. I also really like, the theme for today, because this week's theme was a lot about inner reform and reevaluating our faith and our actions. And you were citing Paul, and one of the things that we studied this week was Paul saying, preach all the time, and when needed, use words. Like what you said in terms of the importance of our example to our kids, our example to our husbands. And many times people come to us and say, oh, my husband or my wife, they're not spiritists. Can you talk to them? And, maybe you can convince them to come. Say, that's not how it works. Through your transformation at home, they will probably see, oh, so that's something different about that place, because, Anna is not impatient as she used to be. She's not screaming, or, banging the doors anymore. What's going on? So that by our example, they will see Jesus through us, maybe in a very, foggy way. Like Paul used to say, he's trying to do good, but It keeps doing the bad. And that happens with us. We have the good intention in times, and when we flip again, and and we snap again, but we keep going. That's the journey. That's the narrow door. Um, the other thing that I want to comment before I open to everyone's commenting was you mentioned the two books from Joanna de Angelis, and I think that this, as Divaldo says right now, is the time for us to become educators. And to become educators doesn't mean to educate others. To become educators means to educate us. Because it's very easy to think, okay, I'm an educator, so I'm, saying stuff. That's not it. It's about this inner reform that transforming. We have all the tools, all the books. Joanna de Angelis saying, being a great psychotherapist in a spiritual form, and being pretty straightforward in terms of rights and wrongs. And she doesn't measure her tongue, right? She puts it as it is, but for us to think about. So you mentioned the two books, The Empty Lives and The Full Lives. They are both translated into English right now?
Yes, they are both translated into English. Full Life is already available at lealpublisher.com. And Empty Lives you can already pre-order, so it's coming out soon. And yeah, so people can go there. One thing that you said there that's so important, and I always like to clarify, because sometimes people may not understand quite well the message from Joanna de Angelis. From the beginning, when we were saying about not finding in our own homes, people that uh, will follow the same inclinations that we have. I always like to say it is not about the label. It's not about labeling ourselves as spiritists or spiritual people. It's about what we are doing. It's about the changes we are doing, and how they can impact the lives of others. Like you say, oh my God, she's going through that so much, and how can she be so calm or understanding with the situations of life? So we become examples. And the main goal of spiritism, I love that phrase. I always use that when there is a workshop on mediumship that I give. And the last image that I put is a message from Kardec, where he says that basically that mediumship is absolutely not the important point in spiritism. What is the important point? It's about our moral transformation. And when we talk about all the messages that we have in the codification, is starting with opening this curtain to us, showing the life, the universe, the life of spirit, reincarnation, life in the afterlife, and then the moral laws, talking about emphasizing the importance of all us going through this process of inner transformation. Learn even from the medium's book, learning from the spirits themselves through the communications, what are their experience, and how can we, or that life goes on and there is a purpose here. The gospel according to spiritism, which brings more light to this whole process of moral evolvement, and heaven and hell, with the all the testimonials that we have from spirits of different order. And Genesis, that talks, it's the longest treaty that we have about God, that Kardec presented to us, and then talking about our involvement life here, our genealogy, the planet, and the miracles. And Joanna de Angelis, in her possibility and understanding of psychotherapy, understanding the human nature. This is what our purpose is to us. There are people that sometimes say, oh, you're studying Joana de Angelis, this is not spiritism. This is pure spiritism, because the main goal of Joana de Angelis, the spirit Joana de Angelis, is to lead us to the main goal of spiritism, which is our inner transformation. So that's why I think what has been bringing to us in these decades through the medium, through our, dear Divaldo Franco, and it has contained such value, and we have to use that to and understand all this process that she brings to us to achieve what we have in Spiritism. What was the message of Jesus in the first place? What was the purpose of Abraham in presenting to us? Again, no more revering the idols of stone, but understanding the presence of this creator. So it's, yeah, now I became passionate again.
For one more question before I open, there are some people who are going right now through very tough times in our group, kind of life and death experiences, and going through major surgeries, and faith is very important in a time of pain, because that's what keeps us sane, not giving up. Is there any book from Joana de Angelis that you suggest specifically, because for these people and for all of us as well, because as I said before, we all go through our ups and downs, moments in life that we go, oh my goodness, I don't think I can handle this anymore. But in many moments, instances in our lives, we go like, please God, take this away. Take this pain away, take this disease away, take these people away. And we know that sometimes that's not the answer, right? Because we go through what we have to go through. And that's part of the healing, the cleansing that we need to go through this life. Do you have any suggestion in terms of a book that has been translated by Joana de Angelis that could help this kind of an inner healing?
Because you mentioned that we are talking about more difficult than normally it is, right? Because we are always facing these challenges, but more difficult times than normal. I would say that sometimes when people go through this, those difficult phases, it's harder for them to concentrate in the readings, or if it's something more elaborate. So I would say that the book of messages from Joana de Angelis, like a little happy life, recipes for peace, with little messages, just it would be enough for us to start changing our mental outlook. If you go through messages, through lessons, like this book that I'm talking about, maybe that could be too much, because it requires more attention, but those messages, I think it brings more light. And so I would say from her particularly, I would go with Happy Life and Recipes for Peace, those little books that we have. And of course, praying, the way we understand prayer to be, not words that we have learned from before, that we know by heart, memorized prayers, because not about this. It's about the way that we position ourselves to God. And but this message of faith, I think, is the best one. Happy Life also brings the idea that being alive is a present, regardless of the challenges we may find, the difficulties we may find. And to many people, it would be, okay, you're going through that, but would you rather be dead? Then we would say, no, no, it's not that. Let's not go there, right? So this is it. It's part of the journey. And from experience, we can say bad times come, but they don't last as well, and good times will come back. Okay, so I think I would say those two books.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I'll open for questions, comments, anyone?
I do have a question, Ms. Leticia here. Thank you, Jussara, for your beautiful kind of message, and resonate a lot with the moment I'm living in. My question is, nowadays we see a lot of people, famous people, important people, talking about the purpose in life. What is your purpose in life, your reincarnation? Kind of big purpose. And everybody goes to the big, right? To the save the planet, save children, and I struggle with that. And what I liked in your words is that it might be my internal journey, that it's my purpose in this life, right? So it helped me a lot, because I fight with this thinking, and then I challenge myself. What is my purpose in life? What I came to this life for? And more, to be honest, I feel that transforming myself might be my purpose in this life. And yeah, so it's less than a question and more that you kind of made me rest assured that this is kind of where my head is at, right? So the more my inner reform might be my purpose, and then with my inner reform, I might be able to achieve a bigger purpose or not. So it was a little bit my reflection about, yeah, this, a little bit selfish, but maybe what I was able to, not really get and reflect for myself in terms of my big purpose versus my little purpose.
You see, it's very important that you said that. I'm looking here for, let me see, one quotation. This is from a book by Divaldo Franco and Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. I was reading this chapter today. Is the book is Spiritual Disturbances, and I have it in Portuguese. I'll try translation. A moral transfer. Each person moral transformation will influence the change of the social group for better. So I thought it was very beautiful, this, because from what you said, and we can observe, is that it's always easier for us to take care of the outside, outward things, than what is inward of ourselves. So we don't want to deal with ourselves. We don't want to look truly in the mirror and see really who we are and what has to be done. That's why this is the most difficult journey we have, and is the most important point in the Spiritism that Joana de Angelis came to emphasize and to bring to us with the resorts of, the science that we have on Earth in terms of psychotherapy and transcendental the therapy, all of this, to call our attention. We don't want to face the beasts, let's say, the monsters that is still living in us. And sometimes I wonder if the idea that we may have of saying, no, my main purpose and what I have to do now is to take care of myself, and considering that selfishness is not an invasion of spirits that do not want us to march towards the light. Because see, when I'm good, truly, when I do this inner transformation in myself, I will not destroy the planet. I will not let a child go starving, and when there is plenty of food in different places. I'm not going to be throwing trash in the water that I know that it will become my source of life. You see, so education, the education of the spirit, and education is not just in this case having the knowledge, is doing the work.
Yeah.
So if everyone, I say, when we accept reincarnation in this world, it has to change completely, because now we have people that say, I couldn't care less about ecology, the ecosystem. I have more 20, 30 years, 40 years talk to live. I don't care. Oh no. You know what? You're going to get back. And you're going to blame your ancestrals that it was actually you, right? So I cannot position myself like this anymore, like, Pilatus syndrome. I just wash my hands. I have nothing to do with that. So that's why it's easier for us to save the trees. I mean, I go there. I put protection there. I put a wall there. Next day, next month, if there is no education, people will say, "Oh, I need those trees. I need fire. I need wood for my fireplace," and go there and just destroy it if I do not have the realization. So that's why it is the most important. It is not selfish. I mean, think truly, we ourselves, we bring so much distress in the world that we live, right? There are days that we are not good. We are going to be rude to people. We are going to have an argument, a fight with friends or family members. We are going to have actions. We are not perfect. Of course, we are going to have actions that may jeopardize things. No one is watching, so I can throw garbage whenever I want to, all of those things. So if I take care of myself in terms of this educational process, and not being another person that will bring aggravation to my environment, oh my God, this is doing good enough, right? So that should be the main goal, and I'm happy you brought this up, Leticia, and so that we can emphasize this is not selfishness. We were not, Jesus said, know the truth, and truth will set you free. We're not talking about me, Jussara, knowing the truth of Leticia and start gossiping with Tabata and say, do you know what Leticia is doing with her life? Even if it's good thing, she's not thinking about my own self, so we get too much distracted, and Instagram, Facebook, all those TikTok now. I mean, everything is placing us our our precious time in others and not ourselves, and not doing the work. And this is really damaging to us. So it's not selfishness at all. It's what we should be doing. Right.
I want to comment one thing that you said about the label, right? In terms of you don't need to be Spiritist or Christian or Catholic or Jewish or Muslim or whatever. It's about the religion within us, right? It's about the spirituality within us. That's what really matters when Jesus says that, his sheep were from all over the place. That's what he meant, right? So it's kind of a bringing that kind of a moral values within us rather than, carrying the label on our front.
You see, in this current reincarnation, Spiritism resonates in us. It is logic, it goes along with reason, it's clear, according to our process of evolvement, is what fits us well, not necessarily other people according to their religious life history and a spiritual process. Okay, I normally emphasize that, Anna, because now she moved it to another city, but I had a Muslim spiritist in our spiritist group, and her husband and children were actually followers of the Muslims ideas and all of that, but she learned the spiritism. Of course, she was Brazilian. In Brazil, everyone learns about spiritism. She was a Muslim spiritist, and she came to me once to talk to me. Actually, we were in a study group, and she said, I'm having a problem because I want to do the gospel at home with my family, but they are Muslims. I'm the only one that is spiritist. Then I told her, well, sometimes I'm very straight to the point, forgive me. I said, listen, so you did not understand what is the purpose of the gospel at home. It's not about the book. It's not about the book of the prayers of your choice. It's about, gathering the family, having a spiritual, religious experience time with your family at that time. If they prefer the Quran, or I don't know if that is the name in English, use this book, because the important moment is to have this moment where your family will be gathered in a religious way, in a spiritual way, we'll be able to exchange, the experiences of life that we barely do today. So whether you use the gospel according to Spiritism, or you use the Torah, or you use any other book, it's not about that. Mm-hmm. It's about, our connection, spiritual connection with the Almighty. And so this is why I say it goes beyond label. I know people that are not atheist, but they don't have any particular belief or follow any particular philosophy or religion, and they are good. And sometimes I say, I wish I could be as good as them, because, some just naturally. To me, no, it's like I have this red light that going the wrong way, because uh, that kinds of control me. So I need that structure. There are people that do not need any kind of structure to just to be natural good, or to work their potentials. So here I'm not I'm not trying to say, oh, don't become a spiritist. Okay, no. I think some of us, we really have to punch our cards daily. And there are some that do not need. But I mean, for myself, I'll say I need it, and I have a commitment. But it's not about punching the card and saying I go 2-3 times a week, or I watch I don't know how many talks and online. Or it's not about that. It's about just doing. And this is why, I always emphasize this aspect. It's not label. And label, the labels of, Christians, Catholics, promoting the Crusades, promoting the Inquisition, uh, I mean, and Muslim promoting other destructions, and the religious war. So it's not about label. It's really about what we are doing, and where we are putting our vision. So you don't want it to be attached to any label. Okay, just be a good person and try to, like, there is this phrase that I like, become better today than you were yesterday. It is a good enough goal, to what we have to do. And law of cause and effect. It's a boomerang. Everything you throw in the world comes even with more strength back to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments? Thank you so much, Jussara. It was great to have you here. Really a blessing. It's helps us rejuvenate. We think about our beliefs. Also reflect about what we have learned so far. Kind of going back what you said, the 5 years. How am I different now? The 0.1 progress that I've been through. Maybe it's not all that I could have done, right? That's what is done, and that's not lost. And the other thing that you said that it's very important is that the seeds, right? So all the seeds that we sow in ourselves and in others, they may blossom, grow in different times. There is a fatality that they will eventually grow. We don't know when. And that's okay, because that's how nature works, right? So the speed of growth of a little bean is very different than the speed of growth of a seed for an apple tree. But then after it grows, we cannot count how many apples we're gonna have inside that seed, right? Uncountable apples. So maybe be patient with us, trust the process, and continue the journey, right? One day at a time. So we thank Jussara, all the celestial spirits that are here with us, especially our guardian angel, the one that has been designated to take care of us, to inspire us. And usually this guardian angel is someone who is very dear and close to us, that have known us from multiple experience in the material realm. Thank you for being for us, with us, for this long. We thank all our invisible friends who support us, who give us strength in moments that we feel like we are about to break. We pray for all of those who need faith in this moment, who are going through tough times, knowing, as Jussara said, everything passes, and this shall pass too. Dear God, inspire us to be this little beam of light, this light that first illuminates us, but also illuminates all the people around us. Help us educate ourselves so we can do the work that we were supposed to do. Bless our planet, who goes through so much turmoil right now, where so many people need faith, need spirituality to be able to hang on. Help us through this transition. Give us strength, courage, energy, faith, patience, but mostly compassion with one another. Remembering that we are all brothers and sisters, and we came here to learn to love one another. Amen. Thank you, Jussara. It was a pleasure to have you here.